Welcome to Inside Economics. I'm Mark Zandy, the chief economist of Moody's Analytics, and I'm joined by two of my colleagues, my trusty co-host, Cris. Hey, Cris.
Hey, Mark.
How are you? It's early in the week. This is a Wednesday, August 6th. This is a special podcast, and we'll let everyone in on that shortly. But feels a little weird on a Wednesday, doesn't it? As
It
opposed to
does. It
Friday.
does.
Yeah.
And without Marissa, right?
And she's on another plane somewhere, I think.
Yeah, but she really wanted to make this one.
I know, yeah, and we'll clue everyone on why is on that as well. And we have Dante D'Antonio, Dr. D'Antonio. How are you, Doctor?
Doing well, Mark. How are you?
You're back from the beach, I see.
I am. Yep, made it back.
Yeah, no worse for the wear. How was the
Yep.
beach? All good?
It was good. Yeah, weather was good. Good time.
Good. You're rested?
Finally, yep.
You're good because we have a lot of work for you.
I know.
Yeah, and this is an important podcast because we have Erica Groshen on the line here with us. Erica, good to see you.
Good to see you too, Mark.
Yeah, Erica was the former commissioner of the BLS, the Bureau of Labor Statistics, obviously top of mind given everything that was going on. Hey, can Erica, you're at Cornell now, right? You're a professor at Cornell.
Not professor, senior economic advisor.
A senior economic advisor. That sounds better, actually.
It means I don't teach on a regular basis. I do like little guest stints and things like that.
But that sounds like a good gig. Yeah.
I'm very happy to be there with them. Yes. Although I work out of Seattle, so there we are.
You're in Seattle. Is that home? I guess that's
okay.
home. Oh, very good. Are you from Seattle, Erica?
No, I moved here 4 years ago, but my kids settled here and I have a granddaughter now, and off we went.
Congratulations. I get that. I get that. And when you were BLS commissioner, that was from 2012 to 2017? Did I get that right?
2013, January 2013 to January 2017. Yeah.
So under President Obama.
Yes, my confirmation was delayed, so my term ended up, and it's very unusual for the BLS, not really spanning presidential terms. Usually it does span terms, but I was only commissioner during the first week of President Trump's first term.
And then William Beach succeeded you as the commissioner.
Yes, with a gap in between, but then he succeeded me. Yeah.
Right. Got it. I do recall that was to be confirmed for that spot was a bit of as I recall, a chore. I thought
it took almost a year.
Yeah.
I was nominated in February and sworn in January. Yeah.
Right. I remember writing a recommendation letter to a bunch of senators saying, hey, what the heck's going on? But I'm glad that worked out. What was the holdup? Why did it take so long? Do you know?
I think the Republicans were hoping that a Republican would win the election.
Oh, I see.
And so they wanted to hold it open to be able to appoint the BLS commissioner.
Got it.
So that then when President Obama won a second term, then they were willing to move ahead, and I was confirmed unanimously.
Got it. Congratulations. And
thank you.
That fortunate for the BLS and for the nation that happened. But before I want to get a better sense of, life as a commissioner of the BLS, obviously in the context of everything that's going on. And we'll come back to all that stuff as well. But before you were commissioner, I was reading your bio. I had forgotten you were at the New York Fed for a long time.
Yeah, I spent most of my career in the Federal Reserve System. So I started at the Cleveland Fed for 7 years, and then I went to actually I taught for a year at Barnard, and then I went to the New York Fed, and I was there continuously except for a year in Basel at the Bank for International Settlements. I was there until 2013 when I started at BLS. Yeah, and it was great. Doing, economic research, advising on monetary policy, did a stint doing regional communications work. Let's see, what else? Editing their economic journal and, writing papers and doing fun things.
Being a Fed economist. Yeah.
Being a Fed economist.
Right. And so you were there for most of your career, then you went on to BLS, and then now at Cornell. Got it.
Yeah,
Got
yeah,
it.
27 years there, and then Cornell, rather then BLS, and then Cornell, right?
Great. So, can you give us a sense of the day in the life of a BLS commissioner? Maybe to make it even more specific, in the days leading up to and during the day the jobs numbers are released. I mean, the
Mhm,
BLS, Bureau of Labor Statistics. Oh, by the way, I have a good question. I have a quiz for you.
mhm.
Because I'm doing my research. What year was the BLS established? Do you know?
1884.
Okay, very good. I couldn't fool her. I couldn't. I did. I was pretty surprised by that. That's a long time.
It was the first independent statistical agency created in the federal government. It led the way.
Wow, I didn't know that. So 150 years of history here, pretty
140.
much.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'll round up to 150. Yeah,
Close enough. Close enough.
right, right. And of course, the BLS does all kinds of things. The thing that's kind of front and center in the minds of most people, certainly folks like us who are on Wall Street and worried about what's going on with the economy and jobs and Fed policy and everything else. We're focused on that jobs release that comes out the first Friday of every month, and then the other big release that is important at different times, but certainly important now, is the Consumer Price Index, the CPI. But the BLS, it's enormous, right? The amount of statistical data that comes out of that agency on a regular basis.
What it produces is enormous, but it's actually not that large an agency in the federal government. When I was there, it was about 2,500 people. Now it's down to probably less than 2,000. About 1,500 of them in Washington, and the other thousands scattered across the country, taking care of regional operations. It has about 25 programs. You've just mentioned the products of 3 of those programs, the Consumer Price Index, which is consumer inflation, and then the payroll, the employment situation that comes out every month is actually the product of 2 separate programs. The Current Population Survey, which is the household survey measuring how households are doing, the labor market conditions from a household perspective. And then the CES, the Current Economic Statistics Program, and that's often called the payroll program or the business survey or establishment survey. It's got lots of names, but that's all the CES. And those 2 things, the CPS and the CES, are the input to the employment situation that comes out monthly.
Got it. And I mentioned before we went on the air here that Dante was a former BLS employee. Dante, what program did you work on?
I worked in the CES program, but I worked on the state and area side. So I did the state and metro employment data, not national.
Right. And you didn't overlap with Erica. You were there just right before her.
That's right.
Yeah. So you handed off the baton.
Yeah, I was a lowly economist, but yeah, I handed the baton. Yeah.
Okay. So Erica, what's the day in the life like? What is it most just a general sense of, what's the job exactly?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that week is a special part, and it's, basically, about I guess in some ways a fourth of the time there, because, every month there's the employment week. So it's an important week, but it's actually pretty different from most of the other weeks. So it's a week where I didn't give many, I very rarely gave a talk or appeared outside to people during that week, because I knew the numbers, And so it was both to avoid a slip or someone thinking that maybe something had been slipped.
Oh, can I ask? So you actually knew what what unemployment would be almost a week before the release?
No, a few days before,
A few
during
days
that
before.
week.
During that week, you would,
During that week,
because
right.
it's released on a Friday. So during that week, you would learn what the numbers were at that.
Right. So usually by the end of the day, Monday, I had the CPS numbers. So
Okay.
it would be final by them. And they had the collection's all done for that survey. The collection is all done at census. So they collected the they collected the data, shipped it to the BLS, and the BLS then processed it and turned it into the tables that I would receive by the end of the day on Monday.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And do you have any input at all into the numbers and the data? Does the
On a
commissioner
monthly basis, not at all.
Not
Nothing.
at all.
I have
Nothing.
no access. I'm no access to the underlying data, no access to the programs that generate it. Just get the PDFs.
Right. Why do you suppose that you even know what the numbers are? Why? Because it's need to know, isn't it? I mean, I
Oh,
think,
it's especially the first few times, like, hey, I could move markets,
yeah.
oops.
Right. Yeah. That would make me nervous, by the way. I'd be very nervous with that information.
It did make me nervous in the beginning. Yeah.
Yeah. Because you could spill the beans inadvertently.
Well, that's part of the reason not to go out.
Not to go out. Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Uh,
So need to know. I mean, like my understanding is the chair of the Council of Economic Advisors gets the data maybe
Thursday.
the
Thursday.
Thursday night, right?
Yeah.
And I'm
Thursday
sure,
afternoon, yeah. Mhm.
yeah, something like that. And then he or she would give that to the president, I assume,
Brief the president, yes.
right? At that,
Yeah.
but no one else outside the BLS would presume, other than you and CEA and the president would know, I presume. Or would the Fed chair know? Would the Fed get the information?
I'm embarrassed to say I've forgotten, but I think the Fed chairman does.
I see.
I think so. I think that they tell the Fed
Right.
around the same time as the CEA, or maybe the CEA tells them. I don't. I've forgotten.
Right. Right.
It's
Okay.
10 years ago now, and
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah, it stands to reason, but
yeah.
yeah. Oh,
Because I
okay.
wasn't really part of that, of transmitting that or in that
Right.
conversation. Yeah, so
Right.
that's what so I'd get the household number, and we'll talk about why I heard about it. For one thing, it's just, let you know that to let us know that everything's on track,
I
right?
see. I
And
see.
also, I was going to be briefing first the Council of Economic Advisors, or some staff from the Council of Economic Advisors that on Thursday, and also be briefing the Secretary of Labor from 8 to 8:30, so the half an hour before release at the
Hmm.
Department of Labor under lockdown conditions. So go into a room with the secretary and a few of their staff, a few of the BLS staff, and go and spend a half an hour going through the whole release.
Got it. Got it.
So that prepares you, you look at them, I'm an economist, there are things I always look for, there are
Mhm.
trends, so I might, do my own little spreadsheet about trends or this or that, but
You might do a little QC. Does this make sense? Does this not make sense? That kind of thing.
right, what explanation do I need if I'm briefing on about
Yeah.
this? What
Right.
do I feel that I'm going to need to explain, right?
Right. Right.
What
Okay.
do I want to point out? Mhm.
Yeah, the way you answered the question is you don't have, my interpretation of what you said was when you get that number, you really have no input into it at all at that point in time. But it sounds like over time you could have some impact on how that number is ultimately calculated. Is that right?
Um, yes.
Okay.
Uh, so, head of the agency, right?
Right.
uh, Views on what to prioritize, views on whose input to bring into the agency to have people thinking about what modernizations or changes are needed. So the
Mm,
long-term direction, yes, I mean
mm,
that's an important part of your role, looking over the horizon, what matters to emphasize and do, but not on a month-to-month basis.
mhm,
And when BLS makes any kind of changes in methodology, they test them, they run them by their advisory committees, they do research and write papers, they announce it's going to be changed, they when the change comes up, they very often will do the old way and the new way for a long time so people can
mhm,
compare them, and then they drop the old way. So there's a real process for being very transparent and very careful about methodological
mm,
changes.
mhm. Okay, I do want to come back and obviously talk about the
Mhm.
events of the past week, with regard to the revisions to the current data and what's happened to the BLS the current BLS commissioner who was just fired by President Trump. But before I do that, can you just give us a sense of the culture of BLS? Like, from my perspective as a very careful user of BLS over decades now, I have found BLS to be highly professional. In fact, I've hired lots of folks, Dante being an example. I've hired lots of folks from the BLS. Marissa, the listeners of the podcast know Marissa, she's another co-host. She came from the Bureau of Labor Statistics. And I find the folks that come from BLS to be, as I said, highly professional, but very careful, very thorough, very thoughtful, not willing to make grand statements without, significant support for what they're saying. The temperament is, very what's the word? Equanimous. You know what I'm saying? Very, I'm not excitable. Like Dante, I've never gotten Dante to, you know, other than smile. Dante, Dante's not effusive. He's not effusive. But that's my experience. Is that am I seeing the real BLS when I say that?
Yes, I mean there used to be a joke when I joined there. Someone said, "Well, how do you tell the extrovert at BLS?" And they said, "Oh, the extrovert in BLS is the one who looks at your shoes in the elevator instead of their own."
That's great. That's great. That's a great line. Yeah.
These are the world's most dedicated data nerds, right? They are dedicated to accuracy, truth, the mission of the agency. It's the culture is just, you know, really embedded in this sense of mission.
Mm-hmm.
So, and that's what I saw everywhere.
Mm-hmm.
It was really impressive. And I would say when people asked me what I loved about the job, that was one of the three things that I always mentioned, right? That they were just like the best colleagues ever, because you could ask them any question and they didn't take it personally. They weren't defensive. They were totally about, oh, that's a limitation, and let me show you the work I've done on that limitation, and this is how we deal with it, right? It was really ingrained in them that everybody there was doing the best possible, working as hard to make the best possible outputs and be as transparent as possible. And nobody thought that what they were doing was perfect and didn't need to be improved. But they also thought that they were doing the best that they could right now, right? And always thinking about how to make it better. Because statistics are inherently imperfect and yet really, really valuable. And that tension, some people think that something that's imperfect isn't valuable, but actually the job is to try and illuminate things that are inherently uncertain.
Got it. You said three things. You
Yes.
mentioned one. What were the other two?
The other two were
Like the ham
learning.
sandwich you could get in the cafeteria every day?
Well, it was learning something new every
Yeah.
day.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
And I learned something new about the economy or statistics or how government works or how some other part of the economy
Right.
operated, or communication. I'm just every day. In the beginning, it was totally drinking from the fire hose, but even by the end, I was still learning something new every day. And that really made it a lot of fun.
Sounds like a lot of fun. Hey, before we move on, let me
You
hand
want the third one?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I thought you intentionally left out the third one, but please, I'm all for it. Yeah, listen.
Okay. Well, I could keep it a secret.
No, don't do it. Don't do it. Let us know. What is number three?
It's the pure mission.
Oh, the pure mission.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
It was clear and it was pure, and it just made me feel good every night when I went to bed and every morning when I got up.
Right.
That was with my colleagues, I was pursuing a really pure mission that I could feel good about every day.
Right. That is a reason to like a job. That's for sure. For sure. Mission is critical. Before we move on, let me hand the baton back to Cris and Dante. Guys, given I'm sure I missed something that you'd like to ask Erica about up to this point. So, Cris, anything I missed that you'd like to ask?
Maybe just a general question in terms of you mentioned everything you liked. Maybe what would you change, or what do you think is the biggest challenge facing a BLS commissioner or the agency more broadly?
Oh, wow. I only have an hour.
You can only pick one.
Um, I, okay. The constraints on modernization.
Okay.
Okay. So, and we'll be talking about, big long-term things that the agency was facing. Basically declining response rates, combined with a permanent part of the mission of a statistical agency is continual improvement. It's never one and done. The economy is changing, technology is changing, everything's always changing, and the statistical agencies have to adapt to that. Needs change, right? And at the same time, the opportunity is there because we have this huge influx of digitized information all the way through the economy, and the statistical agencies are chomping at the bit to be able to really take advantage of that. But the funding isn't there. It requires an investment. It's not going to make anything cheaper, at least in the short run. Maybe it will in the long run, but in the short run, you need to continue to produce what you're doing and develop a whole new approach to creating statistics. And the funding isn't there. And then there's some structural barriers we can talk about that make it harder to do that. So that was really the most frustrating and difficult part of it. How do you communicate to Congress and the people who influence Congress that this public good that they take for granted is at risk and could be so much better, but it doesn't produce ROI in any obvious sense? I mean, we all know it. In fact, the uproar over the firing of the BLS commissioner this week shows it's a lot of people aren't used to speaking up for statistics, but when they're about to lose them, they realize that they'd be lost without them.
Yeah. I mean, I think you can actually tote up the cost pretty easily of bad statistics. I mean, take the CPI, the Consumer Price Index. So, you can correct me if I'm wrong. My understanding is there's been budget cuts there recently, so-called Doge cuts. So we've seen staff reductions, and therefore the BLS has not been able to send out as many folks to kind of canvass for prices for different goods and services. Therefore, the BLS has been forced to impute more of the prices that they're including in the CPI. So prior to the start of the year, say roughly 10% of the products and services had imputed prices. Now we're up to 30%, 35%. Now, that may or may not result in worse CPI statistics. My guess is it can't be good. I mean, there's no upside to that. There's nothing but downside. But if you're, sitting in as a bond investor and you're seeing that, the one thing that you immediately come away with is there's more uncertainty around that estimate. For sure, there's more uncertainty around that estimate. Therefore, if I'm buying a Treasury inflation protected security, a TIP security that's price and its yield is determined by that CPI measure, I will demand a higher interest rate to compensate for the risk posed by that increased uncertainty, right? Is that just, and I mean, if I buy a 30-year Treasury bond, same deal. If I don't know what inflation is, or I'm unsure about what inflation is, I'm going to ask for a higher interest rate. And, it's not going to be 10 basis points, but even if it's 1 basis point, even if it's half of 1 basis point, you multiply that by 30 trillion plus dollars outstanding, that's real money. That's real money. No?
No,
Yeah.
totally. but that's not,
The way people
it can
think.
be hard to convey, right? So even that, you took several paragraphs to explain,
Yeah,
how that
right.
works, right? The example I often used, and it's really similar, is Social Security benefits
Yeah.
are indexed to the CPI. If the BLS is off by 1/10%, a basis point, the federal government will overpay or underpay beneficiaries by $1 billion,
Mm, there you go.
right?
Yeah, great example. Great example.
Um, and
Oh, go
that's
ahead.
just, one use of the
Yeah.
numbers. If people don't trust the numbers, then they won't write long-term contracts that are based on that have an escalator using the CPI in it, right? And they won't write those long-term contracts at all. They'll be renegotiating them every year or every 2 years instead of 5 years or something like that. And then you have, the economy has this wasted, kind of a dead weight loss from extra negotiations that wouldn't be needed otherwise, right?
Yeah, so you say ROI, return on investment. It feels pretty obvious to me that, the ROI is massive. I mean, think about just go hire a few hundred more BLS folks to go out and canvas, please, and the savings would be enormous to taxpayers and every American, right? Think about mortgage rates, think about auto loan rates, think about credit card rates. They're all higher because we can't figure out or we're unsure about what inflation is. It's mind-boggling. It's just, highly
Yes, but if you take that to a congressperson who said, well, show me how government spending is going to go down then. ROI, I want to know what, how much, if you make this change, how much is your budget going to go down? That's the ROI I'm looking for.
Yeah. Right. It'd be really good. I wonder if CBO would ever take that up, Congressional Budget Office, because that feels like, you could really easily show, I think, that the benefit to taxpayers is quite substantive with, better data. Anyway, hey, Dante, before we move on, anything for Erica?
Yeah, I'd like to get your thoughts on just one other sort of long run challenge that we've talked about on and off over the last few years, and that's response rates to not
Mm,
just BLS
right.
surveys, but government surveys in general. Obviously, your response rates have fallen a lot over the last 15 years since I've been at BLS, and some of that is just general fatigue of people from filling out surveys. Some of that is certainly funding, but I'm curious what your view is. Is there hope to turn that trend around? How would that happen?
I think the most we can probably hope for is to stabilize them. The research that has been done on what could turn them around has not found a silver bullet. Paying people, making them mandatory, those things just don't give you much of a boost. Uh, so, but you can do things to reduce the burden. You can do things to reduce people's fear that the data is going to be misused or misplaced or whatever. I mean, the statistical agencies have a very strong, almost unblemished record on keeping people's data secure. You have not gotten one of these, oh, your data was released accidentally messages from a statistical agency, and there's a reason for that, right? But so what's the solution? Well, there are things you can do to make the burden lower. And for instance, when I was at BLS, for that period of time, I'm not going to take credit for, but I will point it out to you, the establishment response rates weren't declining. Now they were declining before that, and they declined after that. But it was because during that time, BLS was implementing a number of different modes for responding, more and more electronic modes that made it easier for companies to respond. And during that time, it kind of kept the response rates stable. So, and then the most burdensome surveys are like the consumer expenditure survey, hugely burdensome on the
Mhm.
consumers. The CN stat, wrote a report saying, here's how you could redesign it to take advantage of digital information that most people already have, their bank accounts and their credit cards and things like that. And the BLS is really looking to push forward with that, but has never gotten funding to do it. So they're doing it very slowly. And now the modernization plan needs modernizing. So, so there are ways. I think the solution is what we were talking about before. Surveys are not going to go away, but really concentrate them on the information you can only get from the survey. Things like, if someone's not working, why aren't you working? You have to ask them that. You're not going to find that another way. But other things, there are many other things, hours you worked, things like that. Those are things that are present in other records, and the BLS needs to be actively involved in how business records in particular are kept and how to make it easy for that information to be transmitted to the BLS so that they can be used. And there's a payoff to companies moving in that direction, because then they'll be able to benchmark much better.
Well, this is a good segue into the recent events. The last Friday, August 1st, there was the release of the monthly job numbers, both the payroll survey and the household survey. The payroll survey showed some large revisions downward. So they showed not only that the job gain in the month of July, the last data point, was on the soft side. I think it was around 75K, but the down revisions to the month of June and May were substantively down. And so now it changes kind of the whole picture that we had of the labor market. Before the July data, we thought average monthly job growth was somewhere between 100 and 150K. Now it feels like even given the potential for further downward revision, that we're somewhere no higher than 50K. We could be 25, 50K, that's a big difference. That's a big difference. And it changes your perception, your thinking about not only the perception, but the reality of what's going on. That's close to stall speed for the economy. The economy feels like it's struggling going into recession, potentially going into recession. So thus, obviously the firestorm that precipitated politically, and the firing of the BLS commissioner. Those revisions, what do you make of them? Are they completely out of bounds? Are they consistent with historical norms? What do you make of them, and what do you think's going on here? What's behind those revisions?
So they're big.
They're big,
but they're not unprecedented, right? Revisions tend to be bigger and pro-cyclical at turning points, right? So you think about how revisions come about, right? So the revisions, and I've said this, I don't know how many times I've said this in the past 6 days. And I said it often before, but not so often. So revisions, and repeat after me, revisions are a feature, not a bug, right?
Good point.
All right. They are the intentional feature added to a data series when an agency wants to have data that are both very timely and very accurate, and can't get those at the same moment. So the first release is the 60 to 70% of the sample who got their information in on time. And this is the picture that you get from those people, those companies. And there's a lot of information in it, but it's not complete, right?
Right.
And the BLS doesn't want to sit on that, because here you go, guys. Here's the preliminary number. And they are preliminary, and BLS tells you that they're preliminary, and everybody forgets the preliminary part of it. The second month, by that month, the collection rate is much higher.
Mhm.
And by the third month, it's up to 94% or something like that.
And by the way, Erica, just as a sidebar, correct me if I'm wrong, but if I look historically, that's pretty consistent. It hasn't come down all that much,
No, it's a
right?
little bit lower on the first, but the 93, 94, that's
That's
pretty
pretty,
normal. Yeah.
yeah, right. Okay. Fair enough.
Okay. And so when, in that first month, for all of those missing values in the cells, the cell is a group of employers that the same occupation, same size, same geographic location, right? If there's all of the missing values, mostly are just treated as missing values. So for that cell, you just take the average of the people who did report. So that is an implicit imputation to the non-reporters that they're exactly like the ones who did report.
Mhm.
And when you're not at an inflection point, then that's usually pretty good.
Mhm. Inflection point meaning the economy going up or down.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that you're
It's a stable economy.
yeah, that you're not just taking off into an expansion
Mhm.
or
Going into recession.
or heading into a recession, right?
Mhm.
But at the inflection points, then you've got a lot of companies that are changing from adding jobs to cutting jobs.
Mhm.
Right. And you've got some at the beginning of that and some at the end of that. And you don't have a trend yet developed around it.
Mhm.
And so the indicators are pointing in a lot of different directions. That's the time when everybody wants to know as much as possible. And it's also the time when information is most confusing.
Mhm.
It's just at its nature,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And so that's what you see
Mhm.
in the data. So you get this kind of serial correlation on the revisions,
Mhm.
right? Which doesn't happen normally.
Serial correlation for the listener means that if you have a downward revision, it's more likely that the next revision will be down. Right.
Yes,
Yeah.
right. And that doesn't happen when things are fairly stable, but it does happen at these inflection points, right?
Right.
Um, all right. So now BLS has actually done some things to improve that. It has um, it has for very large companies that dominate cells, it now has firm specific imputation routines
Hmm.
to take
Mhm.
because they're very often different from the small companies in their cells,
Right.
and
Right.
they're important, right?
Right. Right.
And so BLS will estimate those separately and put them in instead of doing the implicit imputation.
Got it.
And that has helped to reduce revisions overall. They started doing that around the time that I was there. They chose some of these big companies and they said, so big companies are in the certainty part of the CES sample. They don't go in and out. If they're participating, they're in all the time. Because
Right.
if you chose them randomly, it would be 99% of the time anyway. So why,
Yeah.
do anything else, right? And so because not all of them participate, but the ones that do, thank
You
you.
keep them. Thank
And,
you.
and
Yeah.
right.
Send them a bottle of wine. Yep.
Yeah, but we can't do that
No, you
because
can't do that. Too
yeah, we
bad.
can't even tell you who there are, although
Yeah. 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 Take them to a ball game or something,
yeah,
please.
nothing that could be observed.
Okay.
They could announce it, and
Yeah.
and any company that doesn't participate, shame on you. But
Yep.
anyway,
Yep. Okay, so what? Just to
yeah,
replay it back so people can
say it
digest
again.
it,
Yeah,
because this is obviously quite complex. If you're not doing this, on a regular basis, is the first release, the July number we got on August 1st,
yeah,
that has a 60-70% response rate. So
Well, collection rate, because if you
collection rate. Yeah.
because if you
Yeah.
refuse to ever participate,
Yeah.
we're not putting you in the
Yeah.
book.
Okay. Collection rate. And then you start getting more information as you move forward here. So we're now in the month of August, more companies are reporting, you're collecting that information. And so next month, when when the BLS comes out with this estimate, it's going to take account for those additional responses that it got. And you're saying is that in an economy that's stable, generally the revisions are not going to be that big because the companies that are reporting late are doing what the companies that did it early were doing. But if you're at a turning point, and you said inflection, I'll use turning point, the economy is going, and in this case, South is going into recession, then the companies that are reporting late, that's real information there. They're saying, hey, things have gone south here for me in the last few days, last few weeks, and things are worse. And that's what we're picking up in these downward revisions. So as you say, that's not a bug, that's a feature. There's real information there saying, hey, there's a problem, you guys. The economy is going south. And and when you're down to, 35, 40, 45, 50,000 jobs a month, you're saying we're pretty darn close to some negative numbers. And by the way, and this is now Zandy speaking, this is I'm just taking it one step further. The next revisions we get, this is a forecast. I bet you we start getting some negative numbers. Very possible we get some negative numbers here, particularly when you consider the so-called benchmark revision, which we don't even need to go into, but that's coming too. And we're going to learn more about that next month. So did I get that roughly right, Erica?
Yes.
Yeah.
You did. I'll throw in one other little thing just for the people who are really in the weeds. Another factor.
That's us, by the way. We're
okay.
That's this podcast because we're in the weeds. So feel free.
Okay, I'll feed that.
Feed that.
Okay.
Okay, very good.
From the second to the third one, that's also when you get the impact of changed seasonals.
Right.
So every month, the BLS redoes the seasonals, and that's when the seasonals change. And around this time of year is when seasonals can be changing because school schedules change and hiring for schools changes. And in fact, one of the bigger industry groups that had this that saw these big revisions was state and local education. And this happened to be around the time, and direct causality I can't prove, but this is around the time that federal subsidies to pandemic-related federal subsidies to state and local governments expired. So the state and local schools that were relying on those subsidies may not have hired as much staff as they would have if they'd had those subsidies continued. And that would be this combination of governments, state government, state and local governments often report late.
Right.
And and so that's something that might be in there in addition to a more broad spread turning down.
Before we move on to the firing of the former commissioner, one question, that one kind of idea that's been out there in the atmosphere is, well, maybe the BLS should not do the first release, wait a month and, release. What do you think of that idea?
Well, I mean, that's always an option. If you don't want to revise a number, you can wait until you think it's perfect. Why not wait a year or two, right? And then you nail it, right? Or you can do it once and never look at it again, right?
Right.
These programs and the CES, the wisdom in this program is to say we value both. And we're going to do it. So anybody who wants to can ignore that first number. Go right ahead, ignore it. Right. But some people, but the BLS has found by tests that there's information in it that is valuable. It's just not as good as it will be in the next month or the month afterwards. But it's like, if you go back to the analogy of driving a car,
Mhm.
people often use. And what's the state of your windshield? Well, the first month is after you wipe it once. The
Mhm.
second month is after you wipe it twice. And the third month it's after you wipe it again. Right? And
Oh, I like the metaphor. I like that metaphor.
each
Yeah.
time you see better, but do you not want to wipe it the first time?
Yeah.
Or do you want to
Right.
claim that it's clean when it's not?
Or I guess what you're saying is, yeah,
You're,
if you're not going to drive the car until you wipe it twice. Do you really want to wait to wipe it
to
twice
make
before you
that decision.
make
Yeah.
that decision to drive the car? Yeah, I got it. Okay. Hey, Dante, anything on this before we move forward? Any other questions you'd like to ask about, the nitty-gritty here?
No other questions. I think maybe just to reiterate the fact that
Yeah.
there are these two pieces of the revisions, right? One piece is
Yeah.
from new sample information, right? Additional businesses coming into the sample from month to month, and then the seasonal adjustment issue, right? And I think it was probably about 20 years ago now when BLS started concurrent seasonal adjustment. So we get these additional revisions as a result of that updated seasonal adjustment, right? So as we get new information. We got July, and as we revise June, that's going to impact the seasonal adjustment for May and June and July, right? So all of that new information is being included in the seasonal adjustment process to try to make it as good as it can be, but that also leads to an additional source for revisions every month.
Yeah, good point.
I think, the other important thing to emphasize is that these revisions are not the result of a discussion or a conversation. Right?
Yep.
This is
It's not a judgment call.
it's
It's
not a
it's just
judgment.
arithmetic. Yeah.
That's right. The judgment was on how to set these and the really judgment based on research, right, is how you set up these estimation routines. And then what comes out every month is what you collect and then what's spit out the other end.
Yeah. Let me ask one more question before we move on. So what's your judgment, play economist now, you're in my shoes, Dante's shoes. How do you think the economy is doing in the context of these numbers? Are you concerned about the direction of travel here?
Yeah, I think that this is at least inflection, if not turning point. I mean, inflection would mean, something flat. Turning
Right.
point would mean actually heading into recession, right? And somebody asked me an interesting question that I answered off the top of my head, and I still agree with. That's not always true, but
Nice
they
when
said,
it
well,
happens.
oh, what's changed? Why do you think this has happened? And ordinarily, a time of a recession, I mean, there are some glaring examples. COVID's an example,
Right.
but usually you don't know exactly what's
No.
causing it. It's
Right.
afterwards you look at it and you say, oh, okay, financial crisis, or
Yeah.
or this or that. Well, this time what I'm looking at is the main thing that's changed is government policy, right?
Yeah.
Seems to
Right.
be at the root of it. Nothing else that I can point to has changed. To the extent that the slowing is due to uncertainty or the direct impact of government policies, tariffs, immigration, federal government operations, things like that, then the good thing is it could be turned around, but not if those policies continue.
Got it. Got it. Okay, let's turn to the firing of the BLS commissioner, another Erica. And can I ask, how do you pronounce her last name? Erica
McIntyre.
McIntyre. I've wondered how to say that. What do you make of that? How do you process that as a former BLS commissioner? What's your takeaway? What is your thought process around that?
Um, I would have said that this wasn't possible, that Congress had designed this position like all term presidential appointee positions as a position that spans presidential terms, where the holder of that position could only be removed for cause, where cause is dereliction of duty, malfeasance, embezzling, something like that, not, just not performing the job, right?
Mhm, mhm.
Um, and certainly not on a whim. So this the firing seems to have result from a thought that there's not much difference between a term appointment and and the other political appointments where the purpose of the job is to advance the policies of the administration. And those people serve at the pleasure of the president, and that makes sense. And that's fine. And they do important work. I'm not denigrating it, but it's a different sort of work, right? The term positions are for people who are involved in producing the public goods that the government produces, and their job is to make sure that the production of the public goods is done well. And so so it's a little bit of a mind thing. Like, it's not that I didn't, in some sense, fear it might happen, but I didn't. But when I had the job, I was secure in the fact that it couldn't happen, right? And the reason it's damaging at this time is because then it makes people wonder about what the new commissioner will do when the new commissioner comes in. So even if that new commissioner is has no intention of changing the objectivity of the Federal Reserve, the BLS, people are going to be wary until they finally get comfortable again. And that means there's going to be more uncertainty than there should be about the quality of the data.
Should we be worried about the quality of the data, Erica? I mean, the timeliness, the accuracy, the quality. Should we be? Or is that shown we have to wait and see how this all plays out?
So in the very short run, you should not be. Because Bill Wyatrowski is the acting commissioner. I appointed him as acting commissioner. He has been acting commissioner twice before already. He is a career BLSer, and I don't think there will be no meddling as long, I think, as he is assistant commissioner. When the new commissioner comes in, it really will depend on what that commissioner does. And I think there will be some grounds for worrying about it. There's another damage that we haven't talked about also, which I'll throw in, which is that during the past 10, 12 years, there's just been an increase in baseless attacks on statistics for political gain. And that does a disservice to the agencies. It reduces use of the data, and that damages people's decisions after that. And it also probably discourages some people from participating in the surveys, which damages the quality of the data. And so I fear that concerns about the quality of data will have that ripple effect on further depressing response rates. So, and I fear, you can imagine a scenario where we go down the route of Argentina or Greece.
Oh, goodness.
And it did not serve them well. It would not serve us well. Now, I'm not saying that will happen. I have no idea who the president is likely to appoint. And I don't know if there are going to be legal challenges about this and whether those might win. But there are things Congress could do. Congress could investigate. Congress could clarify the protections intended for people who are term appointees, make that more clear than that, to avoid the kind of arguments that may be bandied about that not following. somebody somewhere is arguing that it's okay. So whatever it is they're saying, figuring out how
Yeah.
to write a law so that that doesn't work, right?
Right.
Um,
Right. Right.
um,
Well, the
I,
other the other thing that I wonder about and worry about is the chilling effect this might have on how other statistical agencies within the government operate.
oh,
No?
totally,
Yeah.
totally.
I
Yep.
mean, this
It's
is,
not just the BLS.
yeah. I mean, what does it mean if you're at the Bureau of Census or the BEA or,
Hmm.
right? Okay.
Yeah. I
Okay.
mean, yeah, the education statistics, the National Center for
Yeah.
Education Statistics has already been gutted. Its its head was fired, right? Peggy Carr
Mhm.
was fired. That has up to now been the most direct attack on a statistical agency. The
Mhm.
others have been more of this collateral damage that has
Mhm.
affected all of the agencies in BLS too.
Mhm.
But
Mhm.
so this, but I think because of the jobs report,
Yeah.
the BLS produces 7 of the principal federal economic indicators, and so it's much closer to it's visible to a much broader swath of the American public.
Yeah, for
Uh,
sure. Let me ask you, we're coming to time here. I just wanted to ask you one more question. I mean, it feels like in the context of everything that's going on that we need to start thinking more systematically, carefully about private sources of data.
yeah,
There are sources of data like the employment,
yeah.
the ADP, the payroll, the human
The
resource
billion
indicator,
prices.
billion prices project for
Yeah.
CPI, consumer prices. What do you think? Is that possible? Do you think the private sector step up here? And I don't know how they could fill the void, created, but do you think they could play a significant role in trying to, fill the gaps that might develop here in terms of our data availability and timeliness and accuracy
Um, well, I mean, they could do it temporarily,
temporarily?
but they actually benchmark baseline to the federal
Oh,
statistics.
that's a great point. The
Statistical.
80, we knew that about ADP. Ultimately, we benchmarked to the same unemployment insurance records, right? So, yeah,
Yeah. So,
goodness.
yeah. Uh, so for a short time, but they, basically they don't have a long run interest in doing this, right?
Mhm.
Federal statistics they're privacy protected. They're aggregated to answer the most relevant questions. They're constructed very transparently. They're widely available to people without a prescription. This is not within the normal profit making mandate of a private company to do all of
Mhm.
those things. So they can be very innovative, but to produce the kind of documentation that's necessary for transparency is just, they just not going to spend their time doing that.
Yeah.
They're not going to create a 40-year long time series if they can. They're and they're going to want to sell some of it because that's how they sustain their operations, right?
Right, 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 right,
And that means restricting the information. Right?
right.
So federal statistics are a classic case of a public good.
Public good.
And
Yeah.
they're really much more like infrastructure than most people realize, like roads and bridges. They facilitate transactions, and it's easy to take them for granted, but when they disappear, you're in trouble, right?
Right.
So that said, it's great to have all of those new sources of information. They
Mhm.
provide a lot to our understanding, and they help the statistical agencies, and they help people who are trying to understand what the statistical agencies put out. And the future I imagine is one where the federal government works out relationships with the companies that do this so that some of their information is fed to the statistical agencies to create these new products that have the features that are necessary for federal statistics, but take in some of the information that right now they don't have access to.
Mhm.
And that will be, there will be governance questions and privacy questions, and and there's going to be a big need for data standards and technology standards to accomplish that. It's all doable. We need a structure for our statistical system and the funding to get there. And then we can have data that is more timely, more granular, and covers more of the economy than anything we've got now, because the information is out there, but we're not getting the network effects yet.
All right, well, let's end the conversation with this. So you're in our shoes and trying to understand what's going on with the economy. What indicator or indicators are you watching to kind of sense? Because as you said, you called it an inflection point. And actually, now that thinking about it, that's the right word. I use turning point, but you're right. I think inflection point's the right word. We're at an inflection point. What are you looking at to determine whether it's going to turn into a turning point? What's your favorite indicator or two?
Okay, so realize that I'm a labor economist, so I'm going to
Yeah,
go full labor here on you.
full
Okay.
labor on, fire away.
Temporary help services.
Okay.
If you are adding or shrinking, then you are either not hiring. Well, temporary help services are often leading indicators. You put people in temporarily and then permanently, and when you're shrinking, you get rid of your temps first, right? So temp help services. I look at them. I do like the diffusion index to get a sense
Okay.
of how widespread any downturn is.
Right. And that is looking at the number of industries covered by the BLS that are adding to payrolls. What percent are adding to payrolls, right? So if that's low, if that's like below 50%, less than half are adding to payrolls, that's a sign that we got a problem. Yep,
Yep.
got it.
And the lower that gets, the more widespread this impact is, because
Right.
that's not weighting. That's just saying, people doing different things. Are they all being affected the same way or
Yeah.
not?
And by the way, that's down. If you look at the July data, I think that 3-month diffusion was like what was it, Dante? Like 46 or something, 46%, something like that.
I think
Yeah.
it's moved under 50 in recent
It's
months.
under
Yeah.
50 for sure. Yeah. Anyway, that's a good one. Great.
Yeah. I look at hours.
Hours worked. Okay.
Yes, hours worked, because you can cut hours before you cut people,
Right. Right.
right? And I do look at initial claims
Okay.
and exhaustion of claims.
Right. Right.
How many people have exhausted their claims? It's kind of, idea similar, looking at the number of people long-term unemployed.
Right.
So those are some of the things I look at. I'm trying.
Yeah, those are good. I mean, if you look at them, they send a little bit of a mixed picture, right? I mean, diffusion index negative, job, hours worked negative, temp help, that's actually stabilized over the last, 6, 12 months. It's down a lot from where it was a couple, 3 years ago, but so
Yeah, it's been
maybe
doing weird things
weird things. Yeah.
since the end
So
of.
I'd say that's a wash. And then UI claims are low. I mean, the initial claims. So I guess that's what you're saying. We're at an inflection point. So we got to watch those things to gauge, what's going on.
Are
Okay.
they all going to
Yeah.
happen from the same
Yeah.
direction or not?
Yeah.
And there are some numbers there that we know are a little misleading. The federal government numbers we know are an underestimate, right?
We know
Because
them. Yep.
all these people on administrative leave being paid who have already lost their jobs.
Mhm.
And,
That's going to be in the data soon, isn't it? I mean, there are deferrals
yeah,
coming
it'll
up
the next few months.
next few months. Yeah. Yeah. So we
Yeah.
know that's coming. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Very good. Dante, one last thing for the former commissioner. Anything else?
I don't think
No?
I have maybe my last question. Can I at least throw out for all the people that work at BLS, a lot of the attention has gone to the commissioner being fired, but I feel bad. I have friends that still work there, and firing the commissioner also calls into question the integrity of everyone that works there, right? I mean, that's essentially what you're doing by making that statement. And so I feel bad for the people that are still there. I don't envy the position that they're in, but I still trust them to do good work.
Well said, Dante.
Same here. They are just the world's most skilled and most dedicated data nerds. They are, near and dear to my heart still.
Yeah, same.
Well, Erica, thank you so much for coming on. I know you've been very, very busy, answering lots of questions, and we really appreciate it. That was very crystal clear, and I think, I think it'll be very helpful for people to hear this podcast because, provide a lot of good information. So, thank you, and appreciate it, and thank you for all your service over the years to the nation. So, very important, job.
You're
So thank you.
you're welcome. You know what? Can I take a second to make a plug?
Yeah, sure.
Uh, there are many companies out there that do lobbying, and I don't think that many of them include speaking up for the support of the statistical agencies on their lobbying agenda.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's time.
Mm-hmm.
It's time. So I think government relations offices should be thinking about how to do that and encouraging all of the public officials that they talk to pay attention to this issue and do what they can, because talk about an inflection point. We're at an inflection point for the statistical system too.
Here, here, the nice way to end. I absolutely positively agree with that, sentiment and view. I mean, companies have to step up here. This is the time to do it.
It's
Yeah.
time. Yeah.
Okay. Well, with that, dear listener, with that kind of sobering podcast, really, sad to see, but here we are. I want to thank you for listening, and we'll talk to you next week. Take care now.